When Gregor Samsa woke one morning from uneasy dreams, he found himself transformed in his bed into a monstrous insect. He was lying on his hard, shell-like back, and when he lifted his head a little, he could see his dome-shaped brown body, banded with reinforcing arches, on top of which the blanket maintained its precarious hold. His numerous legs, pitifully thin in relation to the rest of his bulk, danced ineffectually before his eyes. What has happened to me, he thought. It was not a dream.
What has happened to me? That's Benedict Cumberbatch, or that's Kafka by way of Benedict Cumberbatch, reading Kafka's Metamorphosis. And it may be a question you ask yourselves by the end of the semester when you become full-fledged English majors. This is a gateway course to the English major. Know what you're getting yourself into. It's a lot of reading, a lot of writing, as I'll be talking about here over the course of the video. And it's a course designed to acculturate you to what English majors do. Okay, one thing English majors do is they read carefully through their syllabi and make sure that they're in the classes that they think they're in, that they signed up for. So, have a quick look. Literary Study, Research and Criticism, Spring 2025, Section 4158. My name is May. You can call me Professor May or Prof or what have you. My bricks and mortar office is 321 Revis, but this is an asynchronous class, and I think what we'll probably do is have our office hours every week, if we drop down to the next line, by appointment on Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, okay, which is the class Collaborate key to your left. It's your classroom, basically, your online classroom space, and it's set aside just for this course. You'll see that I've given some times there, but you're not limited to those times. Those are just times that you can be sure that I'll be available for an appointment, okay? So you don't have to say, are you available at noon this coming Monday? You know that I am, and just say that you'd like to meet me then. Well, the course description, I'll bet you've been through it, and I've already adumbrated it briefly. So let's get right to the required texts. We'd like you to get the Norton Introduction to Literature, Portable Edition, 14th edition. Okay, you could get the 13th and get by just fine. This is not optional. This absolutely needs to be purchased because without it, you're going to be at a disadvantage over the course of the semester. You'll have to look up all these things that I list. And often I'll say such and such pages in the Norton. Okay, sometimes I'll say that. And it's so much more helpful to have the book sitting there on the desk, which I recommend, by the way, the hardbound copy, the paper copy as opposed to the online. I mean, it's good to get the online access at the same time, but I strongly recommend actually getting the book, the actual physical artifact, having that on your desk. You're going to be spending so much time online in this class. It's an asynchronous class. It's great that in those moments when you'll be doing your reading, you'll actually have this superior technology. I think most people agree. Book technology is superior to online technology with respect to the reading task. So it'd be good to have that on your lap, have that on your desk, and have it around, that's for sure. Okay, and I think that the bookstore has plenty of copies this semester as they did not last semester. You will let me know perhaps if that's not the case and you can special order it. The syllabus is set up, or rather the schedule is constructed so that we don't need this book like right today, this week. I've given you some backups, sources of some of the material we'll be doing so that you can consult. You can go to these sources and find, for example, Antigone, which I want you to read this week. And you can find a good copy of that right there on the website. All right. So not having the Norton on your desk right now should not be an impediment to your keeping up with the class, but you are going to want to order it, as I've been saying, from day one. Okay. And from message one, announcement one, you're going to want to order that as soon as you possibly can. Then a good book to buy for your desk, right? Also for your bookshelf and for your further adventures as an English major beyond this class is the Abrams and Harpham Glossary of Literary Terms, 9th or later edition. Now, I have found an online 11th edition, and it works. So, you can probably, I've been surprised at how much Cengage wants for continual access to the ebook. So, this is one way to get around this. You can consult that online edition, which is complete. It's the 11th edition, so it definitely qualifies. And I have put a link to it okay, somewhere. Not on this page, but it's elsewhere, and you should be able to find it. And then, of course, we've got the metamorphosis, which I here describe as tentatively scheduled. That's really not accurate. This is scheduled. This is now. I mean, unless something happens and I just decide that maybe we'd be better off reading something else, we're probably going to read this book during this 1 week. I've already set up for that to happen. There are a couple of little considerations still that could prevent it, but they're unlikely to occur. So we've got that book. You could buy a great idea to get a copy of that, print copy of that, something in paper. Okay, good to get the this particular Muir translation of it, as opposed to some of the more recent translations, which are really, really good, and which we're going to be consulting when we get to the book. We're going to be having a look at some of those other translations and just seeing the importance of translation. Okay, the crucial importance of translation and the constitution of the literary text. You have like different texts depending on the translations that you happen to read of these great works, and it really makes a difference. It makes a difference. The quality of the translation, the nature of the translation, what are the principles that govern the translation. Anyway, we'll be talking about all this in due time. And you will see here I've given you a link, right? So this should not be a terribly expensive course with respect to the textbooks, especially if you can get your hands on a used edition, used 14th edition or 13th edition of the Norton Introduction to Literature. Okay, and then we have a recommended text, the MLA Handbook. Again, recommended, not absolutely required. It's good to have this on your desk. Good to have this on your shelf so that you can, consult it immediately. But of course, there are all kinds of online versions of the book and summaries of the book that are available to you. Some of which, in fact, one of which I've already posted it so that you have access to it. Okay, well, let's move on to this business of academic integrity. Okay, which is very important. Why don't we drop down to a DRC statement? You'll see down at the very bottom of the page, DRC statement re accommodations. I'm going to let you read this for yourselves. I've already been in touch with a couple of you who have sought accommodation. If you think that this would benefit you, and if you qualify, the way to, if you think you might qualify, the way to proceed is to contact the Disability Resource Center. Okay, and then should they approve of the accommodation that you're seeking, they will send me a message, and you should send me a message as well. Okay, so that we can coordinate. All right, enough said on that. I've already spoken with a couple of students on that, so that may all be set. But just in case it is still a question for some, that's how to do it. All right. Now, on the academic integrity business, also known as plagiarism, well, I think a lot can be said about this, right? And I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say that lot. I'm just going to say one thing very simply right up front, which is that AI, ChatGPT, to be more precise, is strictly disallowed for all course activities, including but not limited to the following. And I mentioned just a couple of these items that would be best to avoid. You want to avoid it just like the plague, okay? From the beginning throughout the course. For example, the disc board, which I'll be talking about, the discussion board, you don't want to go to AI and allow AI to do your work for you, and then you just kind of translate it into your own language. That's not the way to learn anything, and it's also not a good way to approach the tasks that I have set you. It will be setting you for the class for any number of reasons. For one thing, it's very easy to get into a lot of trouble if you do that, and it's trouble that nobody welcomes, I least of all, with the possible exception of anyone who's actually doing it and is getting called out for it. So avoid that. It really is, a kind of unwise approach to the course to depend at all on that. I've seen some spectacular cases of dependence, and the students have not flourished very well. So just wanted to warn you about that. Stay away from it. It will not help you. It will only hurt, and it's not allowed. So just stay away from it. Okay, let's move on. Okay, here too, I want to be brief as possible. The routine of the course is going to become obvious to you very early on. And I'm going to go through what I call the granular modular schedule here in a few minutes, in a few seconds even. And, give you a good sense of what to expect on a weekly basis, which is a lot of these discussion boards, right? If you look at number 1, 25% of the course, the weekly discussion board participation. She's going to have one almost every week, not every week, because some weeks you'll be writing and you won't have to do this as well. But this is a very important part of the course, okay? And it follows a fairly regular routine, not an invariable routine, but a fairly regular one. If you'll drop down about 3 lines, our weekly routine will be as follows. By Sunday afternoon at 5 p.m., I will have posted a few questions, usually 3 of them. You choose just one. Now, you don't have to answer all 3. You just choose one. But that one that you choose, you're going to treat very seriously. You're going to write a substantial and substantive 1-paragraph response, which means, more than 3 sentences. That means 5 or 6 or 7 sentences. A substantial 1-paragraph response, which will be due by Tuesday at 5 p.m. Then, by Thursday at 5 p.m., I'm going to ask you to write a comment on one of your classmates' responses. In other words, you'll read through what everybody has submitted. You'll have access to what everybody has submitted on the discussion board, and you'll choose one to respond to. And I'll ask you to respond to it in a constructively critical way. It can be a celebration just so long as it furthers the point made. It can also be a challenge, okay? And in all cases, what it should do is not tell us how much you liked what was just said or how much you didn't, but give us reasons why it is a valid or not so valid reaction or response to the reading for that material and the question that was asked. By the way, you're given 2 weeks off because I'm understanding of this, the way that the schedules work. There can be a hellish week in the middle of the semester when it's just very difficult to get this done. Save those up. You get 2 misses of these discussion boards. After that, you start to get docked. Okay? Now, in addition to the weekly discussion board participation, we're going to have weekly quizzes, almost weekly quizzes, that cover the material assigned for the day, plus all the material read since the last quiz. All of that, what I mean by that, will become clear very shortly. Usually the quizzes will offer short answer questions and identifications. All but 2 of these grades will count. Here again, I'll drop the 2 lowest grades, which may include a 0 or 2 required by your neglecting to take the quiz. And this is very important. Quizzes cannot be made up. I cannot make up quizzes. Okay, so if you miss the quiz, that's it. That's one of your misses. You will not believe what a hassle that is for when we're working asynchronously to set up a whole series of secondary quizzes for those who missed the first quiz. So you have to stay on top of this. You have to take the quizzes. I'm dropping the 2 lowest ones, so this gives you a fair amount of leeway. Just like the discussion board, you get 2 weeks where you can just be absent, okay, with respect to the quizzes, with respect to the discussion boards. So save those up and use them later in the semester. Don't blow them in the first couple of weeks, okay? That's the best advice I could give you. People who do that tend to have difficulty down the road, all right? Now, in addition to this weekly stuff, right, the discussion board and the quizzes, we're going to have some writing and a good deal of writing. A lot of writing this semester, a lot of reading, a lot of writing. So if you look at number 3, we're going to have 2 of these shorter papers, and I'll talk about those as they approach. Then we're going to have a short literary analysis. I call it a squib, okay, which is due a little bit later. And then you'll revise it. You can revise that squib and do things to it that indicate that you understand how to write up a proper research paper, all right? So that's a little further down the road towards the end of the semester. Then right at the midterm, a little past midterm, we're going to have a midterm exam, which will mostly cover the little micro videos I'll be providing you. Okay, that will mostly be what they cover, but maybe some other stuff as well, and I'll make that very clear to you. And then a final exam. It's going to be a lot like the midterm. Doesn't even count more. It's really like a second midterm for the second half of the midterm. So again, if you have any questions about the coursework, especially when it comes to the weekly ritual, feel free to ask. Send me an email message and I'll clarify. But keep watching and reading and see whether it doesn't become clear. This is what I call the schematic schedule, which gives you an overview of the entire semester, when things are due, so that you can plan ahead, in your various courses, when you're going to work on your various papers, when are they due, and all of that, right? So it goes week by week and gives you a little bit of a sense. There's not a lot of detail within the weeks, but gives you a little bit of sense little bit of a sense of when things are due. These writing assignments are due, when the midterm is due, right? Those questions, which of course are important in planning. So I'm not going to pause over this. You will probably be consulting this infrequently because you'll be able to go by what I'm calling, as you will soon see in the next plate, the granular modular schedule or schedules, which you'll get for every module. Okay, and we have something like 11 modules over the course of the semester, maybe 12 modules, and you'll get a new granular modular schedule for each one, which will lay out exactly what is due in the next week or two, depending on whether it's a 2-week module or a 1-week module. So why don't we move to an example of that in the very next plate? And here is that granular modular weekly schedule as opposed to the schematic schedule, which I showed you in the last plate. This will change, as I said, every week, and you will be able to find it at the very top of the subdrawer in content that is devoted to that particular module. So it'll say, for example, module 1, and you will find in module 1, you'll find at the very top of the module, once you open up the module, you'll see a title that will make it clear that this is the schedule. It won't necessarily say the word schedule, but it may repeat the name of the module, and it'll be pretty clear, with a little practice, what this means. So this should be pretty self-evident. What's below here, arranged by date, you should not have much difficulty, it seems to me, figuring out how to read one of these things. You'll notice I've broken it down into 3 columns. You've got the name of that module, in this case, the very first module, which is a pre-module, the intro pre-module, which covers weeks 1 and 2. This is a 2-week module. Many of the modules will just be 1 week. And to give you a quick and dirty indication of what to read over there in the left-hand column, and then a more detailed version of it in the middle column, right? Topics to read and watch, because of course we will have not just stuff to read, but also micro video lectures to watch, right? So this video, or rather this module, begins, officially, I guess you could say, this coming Friday. I'm already asking you, of course, to start reading Antigone, to get it read as soon as possible and get it read well, right? But if you just kind of read down through the topics there, you get a sense of what's the order in which you should be doing these things, right? Friday at noon doesn't mean the course has to wait till Friday at noon to start. You could start reading Antigone now if you haven't already begun, right? But Friday, I tend to put this at the top of this column in every module. Remind you that Friday at noon, we're going to have discussion questions posted. I'll begin to post them, right? And all the questions will be posted by 5 o'clock p.m. Sunday this week, most weeks, by this Sunday at 5 p.m., the Sunday involved. I begin to post them on Friday, get them all posted by Sunday. In this case, it would be Sunday the 19th. So I then say, by Sunday the 19th, please read Antigone, have it read, right? And just to remind you, if you don't have the Norton, you don't have it yet, maybe it's on order. We have this very good Fagles translation that is available, and a link to it, right, to this very good translation. It's at least as good as the one in the Norton, is right there for you. It's also, I believe, in a separate little pre-module subdrawer, okay? Intro pre-module subdrawer down below. So have that read by 5 p.m. Also by 5 p.m., read these brief little essays in the Norton and below. I think they're posted below for those of you who don't have the Norton yet. What is literature? What does literature do? Why read literature? And so on. Also read the Edmondson essay, which is below, right? You'll see it, and read through the Arnold essay. I don't expect you to read it and master it. It's long. It's complicated. It's Victorian. The prose is a bit different and a little bit more complicated and complex than we're used to, right? But you could read through it and you get the gist of his argument, perhaps. And I think I've highlighted some sections that are of special interest. So do that, please. Do these 2 things by 5 o'clock on Sunday, this coming Sunday, right? And then, as I'm saying here, it's going to sound a little oddly self-referential. Watch this video in its completion, or in its entirety, before taking the quiz, right? Watch this intro lecture that you're now watching. This sounds a little strange, but I thought I'd mention it, and it should be available. I should think that you have it. You're looking at it today on Wednesday. Maybe it's about noon now, and it perhaps in an hour or two, some of you will be looking at it. I also say that by Wednesday 1/22, that's next week, I'd like you to read Susan Glaspell's Trifles, which is a second play. We're doing drama first as our first genre this semester. And if you drop all the way down, you'll see that by Sunday of next week, the 26th, which is a week from this coming Sunday, I would like you to watch a second intro video PowerPoint, which will be posted probably on Saturday afternoon. And we'll offer feedback on the first discussion boards. That's a really important one to watch, right? They're all important. Now, Tuesday, as you know, because the midterm is based upon them. Now, Tuesday, on the 21st, which is a week from yesterday, right? I'm doing this on a Wednesday. What I would like you to do is finish your first quiz. You need to begin it. Do pay close attention to what I'm about to say. You need to begin that quiz. It's due by midnight. You have to begin it by 11:30 p.m. at the latest, since you only have 30 minutes to complete it, right? So you don't want to like begin it at quarter till and just leave yourself 15 minutes to get the quiz done. So begin it by 11:30 p.m. at the latest, or earlier, begin it. Do know that it is a 30-minute quiz. Now, many of your quizzes will be 40-minute quizzes. This is a 30-minute quiz, I seem to recall. If I changed it to 40, please forgive me. I don't remember. Sometimes I make these modifications. They tend to be in your favor when I make such a modification. I typically won't make it a shorter quiz. I'll make it a longer quiz, time-wise, giving you more time to work on it. In any event, this first quiz is going to cover Antigone and Antigone only. And do keep this in mind, that once you start it, it auto-submits after a half an hour, okay? So you can't like go and look at the questions, stop the quiz, and then go and find out what the answers are. Maybe take a quick photo of the questions and then find out the answers at your leisure. No, indeed, you're under a little bit of pressure in these quizzes, right? You've got that half an hour to work with. So you're going to want to make sure that you get the work read before the quiz begins, because it's going to be very difficult to like read through the work, with the quiz staring at you, auto-submitting in 30 minutes, all right? So do be aware, all the quizzes auto-submit in the time that is available. And what that means is the quiz is over, whether you want it to be or not. So please do not make the mistake of thinking that you have time, to go and like read through the work when you're done, right? That's not going to be grounds for my making up a special quiz for you. Let me say that right up front. And I think I've already mentioned this, that the question of the quizzes will not be items that you can make up, right? You have to just take the quiz and, take it in the time that's available to you, get the quiz done, and that's it. You're done, right? Can't have makeups. You wouldn't believe how difficult it is to do makeup quizzes in a class like this. So, that's why we have 2 drops. You get to drop 2 quizzes just as you get to drop 2 of the disc boards, 2 of the discussion boards, as you will see, right? So take these quizzes seriously. They are an important part of the grade, and do very well on them, all right? If you get extra points on quizzes, I'll explain this down the road. I will bank those points for you, and they'll come out, they may come to help you down the road of the course. Okay, so dropping down as you drop down, right? By Wednesday, 5 p.m., discussion answer response due, right? Which means just going to you'll see a subdrawer open up, which will be inside the module, and it will be clearly labeled, and you'll realize that's your discussion board. And what you will do is find those questions that I posted by the Friday previous. So they'll be sitting there, and you can do them any time between the Friday previous and this Wednesday here on the 22nd by 5 p.m., right? A week from today. So you have all that time available to get your answer response due. And then hit reply once you've typed it in, right? Often you will not see what your fellow students are answering and responding to the initial question, okay? Until after you have done your discussion answer response, the one that you will be submitting, right? And then what I want you to do is by Friday on the 24th is to comment on a fellow student's answer response. And now this will be the rhythm of the course. Many weeks we'll just have the discussion answer response and not a comment, but many other weeks we will have this 2-part deal where by Wednesday, let's say, sometimes by Thursday, it will depend on the week and it'll depend upon what we're doing that module, right? I'll ask you to submit an answer response, right? And then I'll ask you 2 days later, usually I give you 2 days to do this, comment on a fellow student's answer response, okay? Which you probably haven't seen what your fellow students have written until probably most of these discussion boards, until after you've submitted your own answer response. And then what you get to do is talk a little bit about one of your fellow students' responses, okay? Now let's talk a little bit about what's required inside these these discussion board answer responses and comments. You'll see what I've written there. A substantial paragraph that is well written makes claims and supports its claims by citing and quoting textual evidence. Very, very important. And I will repeat these details on all of the discussion board prompts. Okay, we'll repeat these instructions, so you don't need to like write any of this down, or you don't need to come back to your granular modular weekly schedule in order to know what to do. You'll get in the rhythm of doing this pretty soon, right? And I'll be giving some feedback early on the quality of what I take to be the quality of what you've submitted. I say a substantial paragraph, right? Which means, not 3 sentences, not 2 sentences, 5, 6, 7 sentences, a big solid paragraph. It should be well written, right? You should write it well. You should not be sloppy. Remember, this is being read by your fellow students as well as by me, right? Or it's being read by me as well as your fellow students. You should make claims that should be substantive as well as substantial. Substantial having to do with quantity, substantive having to do with quality. It should make very worthy, weighty claims. Don't have to be gigantic claims, but the point is, it's got to make distinct claims that are important, that are worth claiming, right? And it should support its claims by citing and quoting textual evidence, right? So I want a lot of quotes taken from the works that suggest a close familiarity with the work that is up for discussion, right? And you're going to see this. We're going to get into this rhythm. You're going to understand what it is that's expected of you, I think, very soon, if it's not already lucidly clear. And you also have the examples, plural, of some of your fellow students. Well done, substantial, substantive paragraphs to go by. Okay? So this will be starting soon. This Friday I'll start to post discussion questions, so you can get into this also soon, right? Now, one quick comment on the comments, which are a little bit different from the discussion answer responses due later in the week, on the 24th next week, a Friday by 5 p.m. What I'd like you to do is to comment on a fellow student's answer response. I've already mentioned that. Okay? And again, you'll have a prompt on the discussion board, which will tell you what exactly is expected of you. The thing for me to mention in this moment is that your comment should also be substantive. It doesn't have to be as substantial. It can be 3 or 4 sentences. It can be a little shorter. Okay? The comment, it's a comment on a fellow student's answer response. It should nevertheless be a comment on the work as well. And what I mean by that is, what I'd like you to do is respond to your fellow student's answer, your choice of any particular answer that your fellow students have posted. You will have them all available to you, all the ones that have been posted, once you posted yours, right, for that week. So you'll be able to choose which one you feel like responding to. Then the one that you respond to, the one that you comment on, okay, should be commented upon substantively. And what I mean by that is, what I'd like you to do is offer another, not quite so substantial paragraph that's well written, makes claims, and supports its claims by citing and quoting textual evidence. In other words, I want you to go back to the text as you consider what your fellow student might have written, or what your fellow student did write, okay? And I want you to comment on what your fellow student said, either like celebrating it as accurate, but better, maybe even better than he or she knew, by bringing some new evidence to bear. You should bring new evidence to bear and not just comment on your fellow student's evidence. Or maybe by, in fact, trying to correct or in various ways improve upon what your fellow student has said, okay? Which is very often going to be the case. You're going to feel that your fellow student got close to a good answer, but if he or she had considered this other piece of evidence, would have had an even better answer. That's the way to write a really good comment. You should bring a new piece of evidence to bear as you go about responding to a fellow student's answer response, that thing that's due earlier in the week on a Wednesday, right? Which you will have submitted as well. And somebody might be responding to yours, right? So there's going to be a lot of back and forth, which makes for a good, discussion. Something like live discussion. It's not quite live, is it? But it can have a certain amount of drama about it. And this can be a really rewarding part of the course is some of the debates that you guys get into, and I'll be commenting on them, okay, often. Also, let me just mention, in passing, your discussion, answer responses, and comments will often form the basis of at least a plate or two in my micro lectures. I'll be often commenting, not always, on your discussion answers and on your comments. in the micro lectures. So that's another reason to have a look at the micro lecture, aside from the fact that the midterm is based upon the micro lecture of that week, of most weeks. Most weeks you'll have some kind of brief, okay, video micro lecture to look at towards the end of the semester, towards the end of the week. And you will see that I mentioned that down at the bottom of the middle column, that on the 26th, of course, that's not going to be one of those. It's going to be a little bit of response there because I'll have had a look at your initial stuff, you know, your initial discussion board response. But what I will not have done is, you know, we probably will not comment much in this one on some issue of importance. This is going to be more like a lot of feedback. It's an intro video. It's going to be a lot of feedback on the course is developing, and on your discussion boards, basically, specifically offering you some feedback on how to make your answers better, right? And getting into some examples. Okay, then you see towards the bottom of the right-hand column, I mentioned quiz number 2. Remember, this is a 2-week, okay, module. And so there are 2 quizzes. There's a quiz this week, well, on the 21st, and there's another quiz on the 25th. It's really 2 quizzes in the same week. Think of this first quiz, though, as pretty much being a quiz on your first week's work, Antigone. The second quiz is on the second week's work, let's call it, which is Glaspell's Trifles, which you will have read by the 22nd, Wednesday, a week from today, by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And by 5 o'clock on Friday, so you have a little bit of time there to play with. What I would like you to do is, this is a slightly longer quiz, and it will be due by 5 o'clock. Begin by 4:20 at the latest, since it's due by 5 and it's a 40-minute quiz, right? It'll cover just trifles. Just the previous quiz will cover just Antigone. And that will sometimes be the case. It'll just be the literary material that you read for that week that will constitute the quiz. Okay, this could go on. I could go on explaining little nuances, nooks and crannies of this granular modular weekly schedule. But I think, again, it's pretty self-explanatory. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to send me a quick message. Okay, and you'll see at the very end of the module, end of the intro, move on to module 1. You'll see one of those, some statement of that kind at the end of every module to signify that that's it. You have hit the end of the module, and it's time to look for the new one, okay, that will govern the coming week, which again will always be available. Well, I'm not sure I actually said this, but typically these modules will be scheduled. These modules will be posted. These granular modular weekly schedules will be posted pretty much the same time I post the discussion questions, which is Friday by noon, the Friday before the module begins. Yeah, so we're back to the Kafka Metamorphosis opera. Can you believe it? The Royal Opera House. Maybe we'll listen to that, a portion of it later on semester. Yeah, well, I'm going to let you go now. If you have any questions what to do next, let me know. My first response will be probably take a look at the pre-module, because you probably can figure it out. I'm guessing that most of you are not going to have a lot of difficulty, negotiating your way through and determining what it is that's being asked of you. So take a good look at it now before you send me a message, but don't hesitate to send me a message if one persists beyond a close look at the information that's been set up for you, okay? I'm looking forward to a great semester with you all, and as you can tell, I'm very excited about the possibility of reading Kafka with you and sharing this extraordinary work of 20th century literature with you.